Hello everyone and welcome back to Let's Play Sonic 3 and Knuckles as Knuckles. Last time we started off the game and got here to Marble Garden, and now it's time we check this place out as Knuckles. Now, Act 1 for the most part is going to be fairly straightforward, though one thing I am notably trying to do in this LP is take different pathways in the acts that Sonic and Knuckles both share, just so we can see a bit more of the level design. For instance, I think in the original LP I didn't take this upper path at first. But there's another reason I'm doing this, because there is a special ring right over here. So let's go nab that final Chaos Emerald, shall we? This was always a special stage that gave me trouble when I was younger, just because of the way I approached it. With a lot of the special stages, I basically went from blue spheres the moment I saw them when I was younger. Whereas nowadays, especially stages like this, they're clearly divided into two halves that are more or less matching. I always take it one half at a time. Sometimes that means I have to jump over a red sphere or two, but overall, it's just the most organized way to go through it. Though it's weird. This special stage is basically a mirror side to side, except for the position of the mirror of the blue spheres I just went past. Those are a few blocks over from where they should be for some reason. At least it feels like they are. If I looked at a map, it's probably a complete and total mirror, but eh. I will say that doing the special stages without going for perfects does speed them up tremendously, though. Doesn't mean that going through them doesn't take a lot of time, hence why the last part was a half hour between two acts, two zones, but eh. But with that, we now have all Chaos Emeralds. And similar to Sonic, we get Super Knuckles for this. We'll be talking about that when I first activate it. Marble Garden, though, is a zone that can be kind of intimidating when just purely looking at the map, mostly because it goes all over the place compared to some of the other maps. I want to say it's one of the few maps in the game that might be vertically structured. I think it is. I know Ice Cap is, and I think so is Sandopolis Act 2? But I'm not sure about Marble Garden. It feels like it should be, though, with how widespread it is. In fact, I will say, on the whole, Sonic 3 Knuckles has the longest individual levels. Either way, this is Super Knuckles. A minor difference in Sonic 3 Complete for the Super transformations is that they actually add a separate button to transform into them. In the original Sonic 3, if you tried to glide, fly his tails, or do the instant shield as Sonic, you would just turn to the Super form automatically because you had to press the jump button twice to activate it. In Sonic 3 Complete, you can use that ability like that, or you could set it to what it is to the default, which is jumping and then pressing, I think it's the C button to activate it. And Super Knuckles is invincible to basically everything, except for drowning and crushing. The ring count slowly counts down at 1 by every second because you need you need 50 rings to activate it, rather. And the notable thing is your speed cap is increased. Well, there's not even a speed cap to begin with. Your speed acceleration is increased, rather. And you glide and climb faster as well. It's pretty straightforward, and, well, I'm actually not a fan of the glowing pink. I wish they gave him an individual color scheme like they did Sonic turning yellow, but at the same time, I can understand that being kind of weird. Mind you, I think about it, they also did that for Shadow later on, because Shadow, his super form is more of a white gold. I wouldn't mind Super Knuckles being, like, purple. Nice to set it apart. Poor Tails, though. No matter what you do in Sonic 3 Knuckles, Tails does not get a super form with the Chaos Emeralds. They're basically just there to unlock his super form by doing another thing later on. The block like the one I just destroyed always kind of threw me off when I was younger, because even if you're playing as Knuckles, you have to destroy them by specifically using that top to run into them. Either way, time for the boss of Act 1, which is this drill robot, and they actually added something to this fight for Knuckles, this little platform. When you're playing as Sonic, this thing is at a height that you can jump into it no problem. As Knuckles, though, you need this to actually reach it, just due to his poor jump height. Act 1 is pretty straightforward. Nothing really too much to say about it otherwise. Also notable, you heard it there. One other really notable change about the super forms in Sonic 3 Complete is that they changed the music. When you activate a super form in Sonic 3 and Knuckles, Sonic 3 or Sonic and Knuckles, the game's invincibility theme plays, which is short, repetitive, and gets annoying after a while, to say the least. Also, hi Egg-Robo. Bye Egg-Robo. In Sonic 3 Complete, though, they changed that music to be the Speed Shoes version of whatever zone you're in. So whenever I say activate a super form here in Marble Garden, the music just speeds up, and I am Very much a fan of that change because while I like the invincibility teams by their individual game, hearing them over and over and over like that can get really tedious. Thank you, Sonic 3 Complete Team, for doing that. Also notable, I'm trying to use Super Knuckles less than I used Super Sonic and Hypersonic in Sonic 3 and Knuckles as Sonic. Just because it's kind of a weird principle of the thing, because I felt like I abused it a bit in the original LP to an extent, so I'm trying to use it less. Even then, I think in the original LP I still used it less than I have in other playthroughs of the game personally. Mind you, it also helps that I just don't hold on to 50 rings as much as I do with Sonic as Knuckles, because due to Knuckles' own moveset and the level designs that he has to go through in particular, keeping 50 rings with him can be a bit harder, to say the least. These tops always felt like they had a bit of a weird hitbox going on too, because sometimes when you're on the slopes, they won't work for some reason. Other times, they'll work immediately. Something I really have to give Sonic 3 Knuckles credit for in the level design thing, though, is compared to Sonic 1 and 2, which were pretty much straightforward with their level design, especially in early game, Sonic 3 Knuckles has you going left, right, up and down, and all around from the start. The only zones I can think of that had you do that in Sonic 1 were Scrap Brain and Labyrinth, and in Sonic 2, Metropolis onwards, which is not as much of the game. Oh yeah, we could actually use this pathway now. You could theoretically reach that as Sonic, but it was a lot harder to reach, just due to the moveset. Yes, I think you couldn't reach that as Sonic. It's been a while, actually. Now, I believe we're actually coming up on the Sonic-Knuckles path split, because if you try to go the path that you had to take as Sonic in this stage, you'll find one of those faces like the one I just destroyed, but you actually cannot reach it. In fact, there's a collision object in the way that prevents you from reaching it. So we need to actually find an alternate path as Knuckles, which is coming up right here. Just need to jump, glide this way, climb this wall, and we're good. Theoretically, it is possible to reach Sonic's boss area as well as Knuckles as Sonic, but you need to use debug mode for that. And even then, I think some of the Knuckles areas in Sonic 3 Standalone are bugged, so eh. Hello again, Egg-Robo. Bye again, Egg-Robo. Marble Garden Act 2 is also a bit of an oddity in the Knuckles playthrough, and I think it's the one stage that's definitively easier as Knuckles due to the stuff you don't have to do that Sonic had to do. A lot of the same set pieces are still there, like we're going to have the collapsing roof / floor area coming up and such, but the last third of the stage really comes off as easier to me. Probably because they designed it more around Knuckles individually than Sonic and Knuckles, which is admittedly the benefit, I think, that there is to having pathways that are shared as well as unique. You get pathways that are designed for both characters and have ways around them, but you also have something that caters specifically to that character's abilities. Something that I think some of the other Sonic games could have used a bit more of. I'm looking at Tails in Sonic Adventure 1. I like that playstyle, but he really could have had something better to exemplify his own abilities. Unlike a section, I believe, as Sonic, you do need to destroy this particular face, by the way, otherwise you will get crushed, and that's no good. But thankfully, once you're there, you're out of there. The things you can do is Knuckles. Now, the last third of the stage isn't all that's changed. Because we don't have Tails, Marble Garden Act 2 also has a completely unique boss for Knuckles. The way this boss works is that one chain goes out two directions from the floor. One vertical, one diagonal. Now the diagonal one always feels like it's a bit random because it's usually farther away than that in particular. But while Egg-Robo's Eggmobile is going along that chain, you just need to attack him. 8 shots is all you need, though be careful. I'm not sure how well it's showing up in the footage because my editor's not showing it at all. But the fire that the jets on the Eggmobile are using as propulsion do damage you, so watch out for that. That's something that's actually very inconsistent in the Sonic Genesis trilogy, even on game-per-game basis, really. Is that the jets sometimes hurt you, sometimes they don't. Depends on the fight, really. That's Marble Garden, though. On the whole, Still a very early game, but the difficulty is starting to rise from here on. And now it's time for Carnival Knight Zone, another area that's actually very different as Knuckles versus Sonic, because there's quite a bit more pathways we can take as him. This is also the start where we're going to start seeing a certain graphic a bit more with Knuckles, those walls I'm breaking down. And a lot of stages from here on, that's going to be what they use to denote a Knuckles exclusive pathway. Now, something I've never been quite able to tell with the Sonic team development in particular is why they made Knuckles definitively slower from Sonic Adventure 2 sequel, from Shadow the Hedgehog onwards, basically. I get it to know it's a bit more of a unique playstyle compared to Sonic, but there's a certain point where you're too slow. Didn't mean for that reference there, but oh well. Because Sonic characters, I think, should have at least a minimum speed that they share, like maybe Knuckles and Amy are the same speed, but they have their own abilities to denote that, to make them differentiate them a bit. Because no matter what in a Sonic game, what people want to do is go fast. In fact, that's one thing I will say that you do in Sonic Boom, despite some of the other things in it being very painfully mediocre, is that you do at least go fast. It's very automated as all hell, which isn't too much unlike certain early modern games, so I was always a bit softer on Boom, I admit, but it's not great. Not by a long shot. And we're already at the boss of Act 1, which is the exact same thing it was in Sonic's campaign. This weird, phallic-shaped robot. It fires its Beyblade all over the place and it bounces over the room, but you need to jump into the robot itself to show its little coil things, at which point you need to wait for the top to hit it in order to do the damage. 6 hits, I think, is all you need. On the whole, this is actually a very hard boss, in a way, for Knuckles, because, first off, you jump slower, obviously. But there's actually a decent distance between the last checkpoint I hit and here. So with that death, I had to backtrack a bit. As you can see, I lost my rings along the way. Hey! I've never really been able to memorize where those are in either the unique paths or the shared boss rooms. I don't know why. But that's one of the few items I always remember is there. Even though the bubble shield doesn't get too much use in Carnival Knight, though I think it gets a bit more use as Knuckles than it did as Sonic, because for some reason there's a bit more water in this stage on Knuckles' pathway. I mean, cool, but why? Now, due to Knuckles' own abilities, we're actually not going to be seeing one particular thing in this zone, which is the infamous barrel. Knuckles' pathway takes him underneath most of the stage. Ah, that feels good. I'm actually very glad they made Knuckles' glide something that can actually break objects. Certain other games, oh jeez, would have just made it so that it's simply an animation that you use to fly around, not a damaging attack. And now for the most dangerous portion of the stage. There's a couple of these cannons throughout Act 2. Essentially, whatever direction you're facing when you press the button is the direction you face out. However, with this particular cannon, it's the only one where you need to be facing a very specific direction in order to actually progress. You need to be in between what's facing straight up and straight to the right, which will lead you into the spikes. My best advice is that if you fire straight upwards, start mashing the button so that you'll probably immediately launch the next time it's available. This is very hard for me to do for some reason. I've always had trouble with this particular cannon too, so it's not like it's a unique instance right there. And this actually brings us basically to the end of Knuckles' stage. His Carnival Knight is very short in comparison to Sonic's, because it's very straightforward, and to add on to that, there's no boss fight. We're done. You can access Sonic's boss room if you take a very specific route, I believe, without debug mode, but I think Knuckles has a lot of trouble reaching the boss, just due to his ability set. So with that, we're on to the next zone, which is my still personal favorite song in the game, Ice Cap Zone. I love this song, it's so chill. Pun accidental in that case. However, we don't have the nice little snowboard set piece just because, well, Knuckles doesn't want to deal with that shit. Notable though, the room you teleport in as Knuckles is there in Sonic 3 standalone, but you can't do anything with it. And that's me showing off that if you grab a special ring as Knuckle, whenever you have all 7 Chaos Emeralds rather, it just gives you 50 rings, so an immediate super state. And Ice Cap Zone's actually a bit easier with Knuckles in some ways, because you can actually theoretically skip a lot of the puzzles, so to speak. Because there's 2 sections where you have to get this specific platform to break these specific walls, but Knuckles can just break right through those walls with his fists. And that route we just went through, you can actually access as Sonic through a glitch in the Knuckles and the Sonic playthroughs. I think I showed off even. In stages that are vertically structured, there's this odd glitch that occurs if you duck long enough so that the camera zooms down. If you jump immediately after letting go down, for some reason the game doesn't know where to place you, and basically you can free fall while the camera tries to get back to you, meaning you can access that area. It's just a weird little glitch. I think I showed it off in the original Sonic playthrough. As Knuckles, though, this stage can come off as a bit short, though you need to be careful to not do what I just did, because you actually cannot climb through these platforms. You actually need to jump over here, and then, nope. You need to jump up here, and this. You're probably just supposed to use the platforms outright. But with that, I believe we're coming up on the boss fight, and this is one that can actually be very hard as Knuckles, super form or otherwise, just because you can't hit him as often. This weird thing summons a very Mega Man shield type weapon-like amount of blocks around it, in which case it will swing from one side of them to the other, trying to hit you with them. It will eventually, I believe, throw them out either one at a time or in a kind of Power Stone-like method from Mega Man 5. As Knuckles, that's pretty hard just because your jump is so much lower to the point where you have very fewer opportunities to hit him. Thankfully, as Super Knuckles, I can hit him on the downswing. Act 1, though, is a stage that feels very much shorter as Knuckles, partially due to the fact you don't have the, at least, I think it's like 20 to 30 seconds long snowboard section at the start, plus, due to Knuckles' own abilities, you can skip a lot of the gimmick areas, like the looping vertical sections. Act 2, though, is one that gets a little bit different, partially because we're in a lower portion of the stage to begin with, so we're going to be seeing a lot more of the underground area. In fact, this is where most of the stage takes place. We're not going to see the above ground area until, I think, like the last third of the stage. The gimmicks are more or less unchanged, though I think these spikes, if you somehow got down here as Sonic in the standalone Sonic 3, I think they can knock you out of Super Mode. There's a couple of weird objects that could do that for some reason, partially because they probably didn't have their full coding in yet, maybe. Although that likes to happen every now and then with these particular slopes. For some reason, sometimes they just like to say, nope, to your momentum, and you get knocked back down. That can actually screw you out of a special ring later on in the stage, in case you don't have all 7 Chaos Emeralds yet. Now, something I find interesting about Sonic 1, about Super Knuckles, rather, is that in the, I think it was 2013 re-release of Sonic 1, it's actually possible to get Super Sonic, or at least Super Knuckles, I forget if it's possible to get Super Sonic. Because there's a method to change the amount of Chaos Emeralds you can get from 6 to 7. And that means, hey, Super Mode. And I believe Super Knuckles is otherwise identical in that version. I love this part of the music. Sonic 3 soundtrack is so good. I've never been exactly sure what it is about Ice Cap's theme that I love so much. I think it is partially just the chill factor it has, but yeah. Now, notable, I think it's in Sonic 3 Complete still, there was a slight route change from Sonic 3 to Sonic 3 Knuckles, where in Sonic 3 Standalone, there was a path that was Sonic and Tails exclusive, because you need Tails to have you fly up there. But in Sonic 3 Knuckles, they added one of those little purple platforms that you have to jump on over and over again in order to get higher, making it an everyone-inclusive route. Not really much up there, if I recall correctly, but hey, it's worth mentioning. And now it's time for the Act 2 boss, which we're actually going to get to see how it works this time around. Egg-Robo will drop down this platform every now and then, in which case you need to jump into him. However, both the platform and the Egg-Mobile itself will shoot out this, nitrogen-looking gas, which freezes you. It's not an immediate hit, but you do take damage after you unfreeze. After you take a few hits, the platform will be destroyed, but he will lower, making him that much easier to destroy, and he just fires out more rapidly. And that's Ice Cap. On the whole, pretty straightforward as Knuckles, really. Nothing really too annoying, but yeah, at the same time, the platforming is getting harder. But with that, I'm going to need to end this off here. Thank you guys for watching, and in part 3, we'll head into Launch Base Zone, and then start off the Sonic and Knuckles portion of the game. See you guys then.